What's up guys, today we're be going over the new exotic sword, the Heartshadow, which comes from the new dungeon, the Duality, which just came out yesterday, and this will drop from the completion of the dungeon as a random drop, not from a quest or anything like that, and I believe you can only get a chance at it on your first 3 clears of the week, one for each character, but there has been a few rumors that it might be farmable, but I don't believe that is true. I haven't seen any confirmation. If you have, please let me know. But in this video we're going to be going over exactly what it does and how good it is. And this is not my account, so probably not any crazy builds, just going over how this thing works. So first, looking at the exotic perk, heavy attacks made with full sword energy turn you invisible, and fire exploding void projectiles. Then the secondary perk, shot in the dark, remaining invisible grants his weapon increased damage for a brief duration. Hitting a target with his weapon's projectiles while shot in the dark is active weakens them. So jumping into the game, the first thing you'll notice when you heavy attack with full energy is you will shoot out like 4 little void projectiles that don't go too far at all, so it's still not like a super ranged weapon. And the secondary thing you'll notice is when you use your heavy attack, you'll go invisible, and whenever those void projectiles hit while you're invis, they will then debuff the target. And finally, on top of that, whenever you come out of invisibility, you will have increased damage to this weapon for a few seconds. One thing that is very cool about this weapon is it doesn't matter how you become invisible. If you're invisible, you will have the shot in the dark buff, which will ready that damage buff when you come out of the invisibility. Also, using the Echo of Persistence on a void subclass will increase the duration of your invisibility, which will work with this sword. So now if we use our heavy attack once again, we will now be invisible for 9 seconds, up from the 6 that it is at normal value. So how does the buff and debuff on this weapon work? So first, with the buff, normally we hit for roughly 20,700 per projectile. Now we go and become invisible. When we first come out of invisibility, we'll get a damage buff for a few seconds. It's like 2.5 seconds, which will increase our damage by 25% for the sword, which is pretty good. Now for the debuff, it's going to act the exact same way as a void debuff, which means it's going to be a 15% increase for not only our sword damage, but just any damage in general. And the way to apply the void debuff is you simply hit the void projectiles once you're invis. So from my limited time playing with a sword, it seems to happen pretty much every time you use the heavy attack. So there's 2 different main ways of using the sword. One is just use the heavy attack and the heavy attack alone. On your first one, it will apply the debuff, and after that you should have the buff for all of your heavy attacks. And this will be really good for being kind of like stealthy, where you just come out of invisibility to hit a high health target. You know, you walk to the next one, or you follow up with more hits on the same one. And for all the DPS testing, I'm going to be using the increased recharge rate of the second part of Lucent Blade, which will greatly help out with, you know, the stealth playstyle, where you just use heavy attack, wait until you're fully charged again, and do it over and over again. So again, the rate of fire of that, doing 3 of these heavy attacks takes 8 seconds. So DPS would be 44.3 thousand. So maybe not the most efficient way to do DPS, but might be really good for some situations where you just need to do some damage, go invis, pop out to do some more damage, and like never be hit. But you could also use it like a regular sword, where you do heavy attack, which will proc the buff and debuff, then just do light attacks until your next heavy attack is ready. And as you see, what happens is you have the buff for all 5 of your light attacks, but it runs out right before you heavy attack, which is not great. But I think the reward of having it for 5 light attacks is better than missing out on your heavy attack. So we look at the DPS of that. Once again, looking at the combo rate of fire. So heavy attack, 5 light attacks, then heavy attack and 5 more. That takes 7.1 seconds, which means DPS is now 63.6 thousand, so quite a bit higher. Maybe not like the highest number ever, but definitely better than just doing heavy attacks alone. Final few questions to answer about the sword is, does the buff stack? And as expected, because it is a weapon buff, it will stack with Empyrean Rift or something like that. As you saw, the first attack was higher when I was still in the Empyrean Rift. The better question is, does it stack with debuffs? So if I throw a debuffing void grenade, as you see, the damage will not go up, which is expected. So it's treated exactly like a void debuff at 15% and will not stack with other debuffs in the game. This sword also has a catalyst on it, which will give you faster movement while invisible. And usually whenever there's something that says faster movement, it's generally tied to your mobility, and you can't really surpass 100 mobility. But with this, you're definitely moving faster. It is super noticeable how much faster you can run with this catalyst. So that further plays into like the ninja playstyle of this scene, where you just heavy attack, go invis, find our next target, heavy attack them, then pop back into the shadows and pretty much always be invisible. So overall, I'm definitely a fan of this sword. I think it's designed really well. What it's trying to be and what it's trying to do, I think it does it extremely good. But I'm just not quite sure if that's something I necessarily want to do in this game. And I'm not sure if it's better than just using a regular sword in terms of DPS. It just depends on how much you value being invisible, then also applying the 15% void debuff without having to use like a void subclass or something like that. Once again, a minor complaint is it coming out during the solar season, but with this being a random drop and not tied to a quest, by the time a lot of us get this on our own accounts, that honeymoon phase of solar might be over and you might be back to playing a little bit of everything, so it might not even be that big of a deal. And it's not necessarily like you need to be playing void for this weapon to be good. It works exactly as you expect on any subclass. It just synergizes obviously a little bit better with void. I think that's all I gotta say about the sword. Overall, swords aren't in like the best of best spots they've ever been in right now, which definitely isn't helping out this thing. But I think in the right situation where you want to be invisible and come out just to do like a quick burst of damage, then move on to like the next target, I think this thing could be really good. Just not sure how often that will be and if it's really worth using an exotic for that. But for the right person that kind of likes this playstyle, I think you'll love this scene. And yeah, I think that's gonna be it. The rest of the video will just be some gameplay with the sword. Like usual, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.